The day started like any normal day on Earth. People went to work, children went to school, and scientists worked in their labs. Nobody knew that everything was about to change forever. Dr. Hannah Park stood in the Lunar Research Station, looking at her computer screens. She had just made a big discovery about quantum technology. Her hands shook with excitement as she prepared to show her work to other scientists. Outside the large windows, Earth looked beautiful against the black space. She smiled, thinking about how her discovery would help humanity reach other star systems. Then the sky turned dark. Massive ships appeared from nowhere. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Hundreds of them filled the space around Earth like storm clouds. The ships were dark metal, covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with a cold light. Hannah dropped her coffee cup. It floated away in the low gravity while she stared at the alien fleet. On Earth, sirens started blaring in every city. People looked up at the sky and saw the alien ships blocking out the sun. Fear spread quickly. Governments scrambled to understand what was happening. Military bases went on high alert. Parents grabbed their children and ran home. Then every screen on Earth lit up at the same time. Televisions, computers, phones, even billboard displays in cities. An alien face appeared. It looked like a giant reptile with dark scales and cold yellow eyes. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English. The creature called itself Emissary Kreldan. It spoke in a calm voice that made everything worse. The message was simple and terrible. Earth belonged to the Drellith Empire now. Humans had 7 days to surrender. They must destroy all weapons, shut down all military forces, and accept their new role as workers for the Empire. If they refused, the Drellith would destroy every city on Earth. The message ended. The screens went black. For a moment, the whole world was silent. Then chaos erupted everywhere. In the underground command center in Geneva, the United Earth Council met an emergency session. Leaders from every nation argued about what to do. Some wanted to surrender immediately. They said humanity had no chance against such advanced aliens. Others refused to even consider giving up without a fight. Admiral Minho Kang sat at the military briefing table. He was a quiet man in his late 40s with gray starting to show in his dark hair. He had sharp eyes that missed nothing. While politicians argued, he studied the data his ships had collected. About the alien fleet, Minho had lost his wife and daughter 3 months ago when Drellith scout ships attacked a colony on Mars. He remembered the message from the colony. Before all contact was lost, his daughter's last words kept playing in his mind. Since then, he had prepared for this moment, knowing the aliens would come back. He stood up and spoke quietly. The room gradually became silent. Minho explained what his research had found. The Drellith Empire had conquered over 3,000 other species. Not one of those species had survived with their freedom intact. The aliens turned them into slaves, working until they died. Surrendering meant the end of humanity, just slower than being destroyed. Ambassador Sora Lee, a woman known for her clever diplomatic work, spoke next. She had tried to make contact with the Drellith. They refused to negotiate. They saw humans as primitive because Earth did not have faster-than-light travel yet. To the Drellith, humans were less than insects. The council voted. It was close, but the decision was made. Earth would not surrender. Captain Jiho Nam sat in his fighter cockpit waiting for orders. He was the best pilot in the Earth Defense Fleet. Some people called him crazy because he took risks nobody else would take. But those risks always worked. He volunteered to fly close to the alien ships and scan them. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. Jiho smiled anyway. He launched from the carrier and flew toward the Drellith fleet. His small fighter looked like a tiny insect compared to their massive warships. Alien weapons locked onto him immediately. Energy blasts filled the space around his ship. Jiho flew like he was dancing. He twisted and spun between the blasts, his ship's computer screaming warnings at him. He got close enough to scan 3 different alien vessels. His computer collected data about their shields, weapons, and power systems. Then he turned and ran. More alien ships chased him. Jiho pushed his fighter to maximum speed. The ship shook so hard his teeth rattled. Warning lights filled his cockpit. His fuel was running out. An alien blast hit his wing, sending him spinning. Jiho fought the controls and somehow kept flying. He made it back to the carrier with his ship on fire and falling apart. He landed hard and climbed out, grinning despite the burns on his hands. The data he brought back was precious. Dr. Hannah Park studied it carefully. She realized something important. The Dralith technology was advanced, but it followed rules that humans understood. Better yet, the aliens relied on their technology so much they had forgotten to be creative. They did everything the same way, following the same patterns. Humans could use that. For 6 days, Earth prepared for war. Every factory worked day and night. Old weapons were brought out of storage. New weapons were designed and built in hours instead of months. Civilian ships were turned into military vessels. Orbital stations that mined asteroids were secretly turned into weapons platforms. Hana worked without sleeping. She created something new called quantum mines. These weapons could phase in and out of normal space, appearing inside enemy shields. It was technology humans had only theorized about before. Now they had no choice but to make it real. On the 7th day, Earth sent its answer to the Dralith. Every major city turned on their lights. Buildings displayed messages in hundreds of languages. The messages all said the same thing in different ways. They spoke of freedom, of courage, of refusing to kneel. The final message was broadcast in the Dralith language, translated by Ambassador Sora Lee. It was simple. Just 3 words: come and try. High Commander Vextor of the Dralith Empire received the message aboard his flagship. He was a massive creature, 3 meters tall, covered in dark scales that looked like armor. He had conquered worlds for 300 years. Never had a primitive species dared to defy him. He laughed. It was a cold, terrible sound. Vexator sent 3 of his dreadnoughts to teach humanity a lesson. He did not send his whole fleet. That would be a waste. 3 ships would be enough to crush these insects who thought they could fight back. The 3 dreadnoughts moved toward Earth, surrounded by smaller warships. On Earth, Admiral Minho watched them come. He sat calmly in his command chair, studying the tactical display. His officers looked nervous. The alien ships were so much bigger than anything humanity had. Minho smiled slightly. Big ships made big targets, he gave the order. The battle for Earth began. The Dralith expected easy prey. What they found was a nightmare. Orbital platforms that looked like old civilian structures suddenly opened fire. Railguns shot metal slugs at incredible speeds. The slugs hit so hard they punched through alien shields. Asteroids that had been mined for years were now bombs, pushed into the path of alien ships. The moon itself had become a fortress. Huge guns built into lunar bases fired continuously. Earth's natural satellite hammered the alien fleet with weapons fire. Captain Jiho led the Ghost Squadron in hit-and-run attacks. Human fighters were small and fast. They flew in, hit hard, and disappeared before the aliens could respond. Jiho laughed as he flew, his voice calm on the radio as he called out targets. One Dralith dreadnought tried to chase the human fighters. Jiho led it straight into a debris field. The aliens followed, confident in their shields. Then Hana's quantum mines activated. The mines phased through the shields and exploded inside the dreadnought. The massive ship broke apart, torn from the inside. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, one dreadnought was destroyed completely. Another was crippled and retreating. The third pulled back, damaged and leaking air. The Dralith had lost almost half their attack force. Humanity had lost ships too. Many brave people died in the fighting, but they had done the impossible. They had made the mighty Dralith Empire bleed. News of the battle spread through secret channels across the galaxy. Species that had been conquered by the Dralith whispered the story to each other. A primitive species had fought back and won. It seemed impossible. Yuna Kim was a young woman who worked in communications. She started broadcasting messages into space, telling humanity's story. She sent footage of the battle along with a simple message. Earth did not ask for this war, but if the Dralith wanted to fight, humanity would show them what it meant to survive. Her broadcasts reached species across dozens of star systems. For the first time in centuries, enslaved beings felt something they thought was dead. They felt hope. High Commander Vextor stood before the Dralith Emperor and received the greatest shame of his life. He had failed against primitives. The Emperor's rage was terrible. Vextor swore he would personally destroy Earth. He would bring 60% of the entire Dralith military. He would turn Earth into dust. As the massive Dralith armada prepared to move toward Earth, Dr. Hana Park worked in her lab. She had created something new, something dangerous. She called it the Prometheus Protocol. It was a weapon powerful enough to destroy planets. But using it might destroy Earth too. She looked at the equations on her screen and felt afraid of what she had made. Sometimes she thought the weapons we create to save. The Drelith armada came out of hyperspace like a metal storm. Hundreds of warships appeared all at once, filling the space around Earth's solar system. Their ships were so numerous they blocked out the stars. This was not a small attack force. This was an army meant to crush worlds. High Commander Vextor stood on the bridge of his flagship. His yellow eyes stared at the small blue planet ahead. Earth looked so fragile and peaceful. He could not understand how such a weak species had defeated his first attack. It did not matter now. He had brought enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. The Drylith sent one final message to Earth. Humanity had 1 hour to surrender. If they refused, the aliens would start bombing Earth's cities. 1 city every hour until humans gave up. Vextor expected them to surrender immediately when they saw the size of his fleet. Instead, Admiral Minho Kang sent a response that was broadcast across the entire solar system. His voice was calm and steady. He spoke about how humans learned to walk upright while running from predators bigger and stronger than them. He reminded everyone that humans became the dominant species on Earth, not by being the strongest, but by being the smartest and most determined. Then Minho said something that confused the Drylith. He ordered all Earth defense fleet ships to scatter. The human ships broke formation and flew away in different directions. They headed toward the outer edges of the solar system away from Earth. Vextor laughed. The humans were running away. They were cowards after all. He ordered his fleet to split up and chase down the fleeing human ships. His officers spread the Drylith forces across the solar system, hunting the scattered Earth vessels. It was exactly what Minho wanted. The Drylith fleet was no longer concentrated in one place. They had spread out, breaking up their overwhelming advantage in numbers. Now the battle would be fought in small groups across millions of kilometers of space. Captain Jiho Nam led a group of Drylith ships deep into the Kuiper Belt. This was the outer edge of the solar system, filled with ice, rocks, and debris. The area was dark and cluttered. Perfect for an ambush, the Drylith ships followed Jiho, eager to catch him. They did not notice that many of the asteroids around them were not natural. Humans had been mining in the Kuiper Belt for decades. They had hollowed out asteroids and hidden weapons inside them. They had built secret bases in the ice and rock. When the Drylith ships were deep in the belt, the trap closed. Hidden weapons fired from all directions. Asteroids that looked harmless suddenly exploded, filling space with deadly shrapnel. Human ships appeared from hiding spots inside hollowed-out rocks. The Drylith ships were built for open space battles. They were big and powerful, but not very agile. Among the asteroids, they could not move freely. They crashed into rocks, got tangled in debris, and could not use their long-range weapons effectively. Human ships were smaller and more nimble. They danced between the asteroids, using the terrain like they were born to it. Jiho's voice came over the radio, calm and confident, directing his pilots with precision. The Ghost Squadron destroyed 6 Drylith cruisers in the first 10 minutes. Meanwhile, Sergeant Doyen Choi led special teams on a different kind of mission. Some Drylith ships had been damaged in the earlier fighting. They were easy targets. Doyen's teams used stealth pods to approach the crippled vessels silently. They boarded the alien ships wearing special suits that made them nearly invisible. Once inside, they moved like ghosts through the corridors. Doyen had trained his people well. They sabotaged the Drylith ships from within, planted bombs, and stole technology. Then they disappeared before the aliens even knew they were there. Dr. Hannah Park watched the battle from the command center on Earth. Her fingers flew across her keyboard. She had built a secret network of quantum communication devices across the solar system. These devices let human forces communicate instantly, no matter how far apart they were. The Drylith still used old-style radio signals that took time to travel. By the time Vextor's orders reached his scattered fleet, the situation had already changed. Human forces coordinated perfectly while the Drylith stumbled around blind. Then Hannah activated her masterpiece. For decades, humans had been placing satellites around the sun for research. Nobody paid much attention to them. But Hannah had secretly turned them into weapons. The satellites were mirrors and lenses that could focus the sun's energy. She called it the solar net. When she activated it, beams of concentrated sunlight lanced across space. The beams were so hot they could cut through steel like butter. They punched through Drylith shields and sliced alien warships in half. Dozens of Drylith capital ships died in the first minute. The aliens panicked. They had never faced a species that weaponized their own sun. Vextor screamed orders, trying to reorganize his forces, but it was too late. His fleet was scattered, confused, and dying, but victory came with a terrible price. While the main battle raged in the outer system, a group of Dralith ships broke through to the inner planets. They reached Mars before anyone could stop them. The colony on Mars had millions of people. It had farms, cities, and research stations. The Dralith ships opened fire. They dropped bombs that exploded with the force of nuclear weapons. The Martian cities burned. Domes shattered. People died by the thousands. Admiral Minho watched it happen on his screens and felt part of himself die with them. He had known there would be losses. War always had losses, but knowing it and watching it happen were different things. These were his people dying. People he had sworn to protect. Minho redirected forces to drive off the attackers, but the damage was done. Mars was burning. The orbital cities around Jupiter were destroyed next. Half the Earth defense fleet was gone, turned into debris and bodies floating in space. Then the Dralith targeted the moon. The lunar bases had been the backbone of Earth's defense. Their huge guns had destroyed many alien ships. Vextor wanted revenge. He sent his biggest dreadnought to destroy the moon's defenses completely. Minho made a terrible decision. He could send all his forces to defend the moon, but that would leave Earth unprotected. Or he could sacrifice the lunar bases to buy time for evacuating people from Earth's major cities. Either choice meant thousands would die. He chose to save Earth. He ordered the evacuation and told the people on the moon to hold as long as they could. Then he went to the moon himself. If his people were going to die buying time, their commander would die with them. The battle for the moon was desperate. The Dralith dreadnought was massive, armed with weapons that could crack continents. The lunar bases fired everything they had. For an hour, they held the line. But they were running out of ammunition and power. Minho stood in the command center as the base shook from impacts. Dust fell from the ceiling. Alarms screamed. His officers looked at him with fear and pride in their eyes. They knew they were going to die, but they were dying for something that mattered. Then Captain Jiho's voice came over the radio. He was disobeying orders. Again. He had taken the Ghost Squadron and was racing back from the Kuiper Belt at maximum speed. He would not leave his admiral to die. Jiho and his pilots hit the Dralith dreadnought from behind. They targeted the ship's engines, crippling it. Then Jiho landed his fighter on the moon with smoke pouring from its damaged hull. He ran into the command center, grabbed Minho, and dragged him to an escape pod. They launched seconds before the lunar base exploded. The moon's surface erupted in fire. The guns went silent forever. Minho and Jiho's pod tumbled through space, battered and burning but alive. After the battle ended, Minho stood in front of memorial walls on Earth. These walls listed the names of everyone who had died. There were so many names. He found people he had known personally, friends, students he had trained, civilians who had just wanted to live their lives in peace. Dr. Hannah Park found him there. She did not say anything. She just stood beside him and cried quietly. Many of her research team had died defending their stations. Brilliant minds lost forever. The Dralith had retreated, but they were regrouping. Intelligence reports showed Vextor gathering his remaining forces for one final assault directly on Earth. This time, he would not play games. He would simply overwhelm humanity with pure firepower. In an emergency council meeting, Hannah presented the Prometheus Protocol. She explained how it worked, using words the politicians could understand. The weapon would create a quantum collapse that would destroy everything within a light-second radius. It would vaporize the entire Dralith fleet in an instant. But there was a catch. Using the weapon required detonating Earth's quantum research stations. Worse, there was a 40% chance the reaction would not stop. It might create a rift in space that would swallow the entire solar system. The council argued for hours. Some said they had no choice. It was either risk using the weapon or definitely die when the Dralith attacked. Others said using such a weapon would make humans just as bad as the aliens. They would become monsters to survive. Admiral Minho listened to all of them. Then he made his decision. He refused to authorize the weapon. He said humanity had fought so hard to stay human. If they used a weapon of such terrible destruction, they would lose what made them worth saving. Ambassador Sora Lee supported him. She argued that crossing this line would prove the Dralith were right about humans being dangerous savages who needed to be controlled. Unikim's broadcasts had changed the galaxy. Her voice reached millions of beings across hundreds of worlds. She told them about Earth's fight for freedom. She showed them that the mighty Dralith Empire could be resisted, and slowly, quietly, things began to change. Species that had been enslaved for generations started small acts of rebellion. Workers in Dralith factories slowed their production. Ship crews made mistakes that delayed supply runs. Computer systems mysteriously failed at critical moments. None of these acts were big enough to draw immediate punishment, but together they weakened the Empire. Ambassador Sora Lee saw the opportunity. She began making secret contact with leaders of conquered species. She was careful and patient. One conversation at a time, one species at a time, she built a network of allies. They called themselves the Coalition of Free Worlds. The coalition could not fight the Dralith openly. Not yet, they were too weak, too scattered. But they could share information. They could provide resources to Earth in secret. They could tell Sora about Dralith ship movements and military plans. Then something happened that nobody expected. Emissary Kreldan, the Dralith diplomat who had delivered the original ultimatum to Earth, made a choice. He had watched humans fight with courage and determination. He had seen the Dralith Empire respond with cruelty and destruction. Something inside him broke. Kreldan contacted Ambassador Sora Lee through encrypted channels. He told her he wanted to defect. He would give Earth everything he knew about the Dralith military. In return, he only asked for one thing. He wanted humanity to promise they would not become like the Empire if they won. Sora met him in secret on a neutral station. Kreldan brought data chips containing maps, codes, and strategic plans. He showed her the locations of Dralith supply routes, fuel depots, and shipyards. He explained weaknesses in the Empire's command structure. He gave Earth the keys to striking back. When news of his defection spread, it shocked the galaxy. A high-ranking Dralith official had betrayed the Empire. It proved that even the Dralith themselves were not completely loyal to their cause. Some of them wanted freedom too. Not long after, a species called the Vexlari staged the first open rebellion. They had been enslaved by the Dralith for 300 years. Working in mines and factories, treated worse than animals. Inspired by Earth's example, they rose up. The Vexlari rebellion was crushed brutally. Dralith warships bombed their cities from orbit. Thousands died. But their sacrifice was not in vain. News of their courage spread across the galaxy. Other species began to believe that resistance was possible. If the Vexlari could fight back, maybe they could too. Inside the Dralith military, divisions were growing. Sub-Commander Thalrax had been arguing for a different approach to the war. He believed the Empire should negotiate with humanity. The cost of conquest was becoming too high. But High Commander Vextor refused to listen. Vextor's response to dissent was brutal. He ordered the execution of several officers who questioned his strategy. This shocked many Dralith soldiers. Their military had always valued honor and loyalty, but murdering your own officers for giving advice seemed wrong. Thalrax became more isolated, but he also gained quiet supporters who agreed with him. Admiral Minho Kang studied the intelligence that Kreldan had provided. He realized something important. Earth could not win by just defending. They had bloodied the Dralith fleet, but the Empire still had vast resources. If humanity stayed on the defensive, they would eventually lose. Earth needed to attack. Minho proposed a plan called Operation Celestial Fang. Instead of fighting the Dralith fleet directly, humans would strike at the Empire's infrastructure. They would destroy fuel depots, shipyards, and communication hubs. If they succeeded, the Dralith forces attacking Earth would be stranded without supplies or reinforcements. It was incredibly dangerous. The targets were deep in Dralith territory, light years from Earth. If the attack forces were caught, there would be no rescue. But the Council approved the plan. They had no other choice. Captain Jiho Nam was chosen to lead the attack on the Nexus shipyards. This facility built half of all Dralith warships. Destroying it would cripple the Empire's ability to replace their losses. Jiho and the Ghost Squadron would use captured Dralith stealth technology to sneak inside. Jiho studied the plans for days. The Nexus was massive, bigger than some moons. It was defended by hundreds of weapons platforms and thousands of guards. Getting in would be hard. Getting out might be impossible. He looked at his pilots and saw fear in their eyes. But he also saw determination. They would do this because Earth needed them to. Sergeant Doyen Choi had a different mission. He would lead teams to infiltrate Dralith fuel depots. Dr. Hannah Park had created biological implants that would make the human soldiers look like slaves. They would sneak in disguised as workers, then contaminate the fuel that powered the Empire's ships. Doyen's part was perhaps the most dangerous. If they were discovered, they would be deep inside enemy territory with no escape. But Doyen had trained for impossible missions his whole life. He trusted his soldiers, and they trusted him. Dr. Hannah Park joined a science team with their own target. They would hack into the Dralith quantum communication network. If they succeeded, they could disrupt military coordination across the entire Empire. Hannah had never been on a combat mission before. She was scared, but she knew her expertise was needed. Ambassador Sora Lee coordinated everything from behind the scenes. She timed the attacks to happen simultaneously with uprisings by coalition species. The Dralith would be forced to split their attention, responding to threats across dozens of star systems at once. Operation Celestial. Fang launched on a day that would be remembered forever. Jiho and Ghost Squadron approached the Nexus shipyards in stolen Dralith vessels. Their hearts pounded as they passed through security checkpoints. The disguise held. The guards waved them through. They were inside. The team split up, each pilot heading to different sections of the massive facility. They planted quantum charges that Hannah had designed. The bombs were small but incredibly powerful. They would create chain reactions in the shipyard's power cores. Everything went perfectly until Jiho was planting the final charge. A Dralith technician walked around a corner and saw him. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then the technician reached for an alarm. Jiho tackled him, but the alarm was already triggered. Sirens screamed throughout the Nexus. Security forces swarmed toward his position. He activated his radio and shouted to his team. They were discovered. Detonate the charges now. His pilots protested. They were still inside the facility. If they set off the bombs, they would all die. Jiho made the hardest decision of his life. He ordered them to blow the charges anyway. Better they die completing the mission than fail and let Earth down. The quantum charges exploded. The shipyard tore itself apart from the inside. Explosions rippled through the structure. Dralith capital ships that were docked for repairs were caught in the blast. The entire facility began to break apart. Jiho and his team ran through corridors that were collapsing around them. Fire and debris filled the air. They found an intact Dralith frigate and fought their way aboard. The ship's crew tried to stop them, but Ghost Squadron had been trained for close combat too. They took the ship and launched just as the Nexus finally exploded completely. They had done it. The Nexus shipyards were gone, along with dozens of Dralith warships. But Ghost Squadron paid a price. 3 pilots had died in the escape. Jiho himself was badly hurt, crushed under falling debris while saving his wingman. He pulled his friend to safety, then collapsed from his injuries. Images of Jiho's bloodied but defiant face spread across human and coalition networks. He became a symbol of what courage looked like. Even broken and bleeding, he refused to give up. Doyen's mission to the fuel depots succeeded perfectly. His teams infiltrated 3 major facilities and contaminated the exotic matter that powered Dralith ships. It would take weeks for the problems to show up, but when they did, hundreds of ships would be stranded in space. Hannah's team hacked the quantum communication network and uploaded a virus. Suddenly, Dralith military communications across the galaxy started failing. Orders were scrambled. Reports were lost. The Empire's coordination fell apart. At the same moment, coalition species rose up across dozens of worlds. The rebellions were coordinated by Ambassador Sora Lee. The Dralith had to send forces to fight fires everywhere. Their military was stretched too thin. Operation Celestial Fang succeeded beyond anyone's dreams. The Dralith fleet besieging Earth suddenly found itself cut off. No reinforcements, no supplies, no clear communication with command. High Commander Vextor's perfect military machine was falling apart. That was when Sub-Commander Thalrax made his move. He challenged Vextor openly in front of the entire command staff. He said the war was lost. The Empire was collapsing. They needed to negotiate peace with humanity before it was too late. Vextor responded with rage. He tried to have Thalrax executed on the spot, but younger officers stepped between them. They had watched the war go from certain victory to disaster. They had seen their comrades die fighting humans who refused to be defeated. Many of them agreed with Thalrax. For the first time in Dralith history, their military split. Some officers remained loyal to Vextor. Admiral Minho Kang's message shocked the entire galaxy. He had challenged High Commander Vextor to single combat. Winner takes all. If Minho won, the Dralith would leave Earth. If Vextor won, humanity would surrender. The Dralith had an ancient tradition called Kalmara. It was ritual combat to settle disputes between warriors. The tradition was older than the Empire itself, from a time when the Dralith were still just one tribe among many. But it had never been used against an alien species. Minho knew this was humanity's only chance. The planet killers were coming. Earth could not stop them and could not evacuate billions of people in time. But if Vextor refused the challenge, he would look like a coward to his own people. If he accepted and lost, Dralith honor would force him to withdraw. It was a desperate gamble. But Minho had learned that humans won by doing things their enemies never expected. High Commander Vextor stood on his flagship bridge when he received the challenge. His officers waited for his response. Sub-Commander Thalrax and the dissenting officers watched carefully. If Vextor refused, they would openly question his courage. Vextor felt trapped. His pride burned like fire. A primitive human dared to challenge him? He had killed hundreds of opponents in personal combat over his 300-year life. This human was nothing. He accepted the challenge and broadcast his response across the galaxy. He promised to crush Minho personally. Humanity would watch their champion broken before they were enslaved. On Earth, people watched the news with fear. Admiral Minho was a brilliant strategist and a trained fighter, but he was in his late 40s. He carried injuries from the war. Vextor was a 3-meter-tall warrior with centuries of experience and genetically enhanced strength. The fight seemed impossible, but Minho prepared anyway. Dr. Hannah Park worked day and night building a combat exosuit. It was not heavy armor. That would be seen as cheating and violate the spirit of Kalmara. Instead, she created something subtle. The suit enhanced Minho's reflexes and strength just enough to make the fight less one-sided. It looked like regular combat gear, but every fiber had been enhanced with technology. Sergeant Doyen Choi trained Minho in fighting techniques designed for smaller fighters facing larger opponents. He taught Minho how to use speed against strength, how to redirect force instead of blocking it. The training was brutal. Minho's body screamed in protest every day, but he pushed through the pain. Captain Jihonam, still recovering from his injuries, visited Minho before the fight. Jiho could not walk without help, but he wanted to be there. He told Minho stories about all the impossible situations the Admiral had gotten them through. He reminded Minho that strategy worked in personal combat too. Ambassador Sora Lee met secretly with emissary Kreldan. The defector provided detailed information about Vextor's fighting style. The High Commander was powerful and experienced, but he had patterns, weaknesses. Kreldan told Sora everything he knew. Every habit. Every vulnerability. Yuna Kim broadcast the preparation process to the galaxy. She showed humans training their champion. She narrated the story of one man preparing to fight for the survival of his entire species. Billions of beings across space watched and waited. The day of combat arrived. The Dralith built a special arena in neutral space. It was a huge platform 1 kilometer wide, open to the void. Energy barriers kept the combatants from falling off, but allowed complete freedom of movement. Ships from dozens of species surrounded the arena, watching. For the Dralith, this would prove their superiority. For humanity and the Coalition, it was desperate hope. Everyone in the galaxy seemed to hold their breath as the two fighters entered from opposite sides. High Commander Vextor looked like death itself. 3 meters of muscle and scales covered in ritual combat armor. His claws could tear through steel. His strength could break bones with a casual blow. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost. Admiral Minho Kang looked small by comparison. Just a human in combat gear, gray showing in his dark hair, lines of age and stress on his face. But his eyes were calm and focused. He had made his peace with whatever was about to happen. The fight began. Vextor attacked like a storm. His blows came fast and hard, each one powerful enough to kill. The arena shook with the impact of his strikes. He expected to crush this human in seconds, but Minho did not try to match his strength. He dodged, he redirected. He used Vextor's own force against him. When the High Commander punched, Minho moved just enough that the blow passed by his head. When Vextor charged, Minho stepped aside and let him crash into the arena floor. Minho was fighting smart, not hard. He was studying his opponent, learning his patterns, finding openings. Every move Vextor made, Minho analyzed. Every habit, every tell, every weakness. Vextor grew frustrated. This human would not die, would not even fight properly. He just kept dodging and moving. The High Commander's attacks became wilder, driven by anger instead of skill. Then Minho struck. A precise hit to Vextor's elbow joint. The Dralith armor was weaker there, and Kreldan had told them it was an old injury. Vextor roared in pain. For the first time, he realized this fight might not be as easy as he thought. The battle continued. Minutes turned into half an hour. Both fighters were bleeding now. Minho's exosuit was torn and failing. Vextor's armor was cracked in several places. They circled each other, both breathing hard. Across the galaxy, people watched in silence. Every species had stopped what they were doing to see this fight. The outcome would change everything. Minho landed another strike, this time to Vextor's chest. The chest plate cracked with a sound like thunder. The High Commander staggered back, surprised. This primitive was actually hurting him. For the first time in his 300-year life, Vextor felt fear. Real fear. Not of death, but of losing to someone he had considered beneath him. It shook him to his core. But Minho was reaching his limits too. His body was failing. The injuries from earlier battles, the stress of the fight, his age, everything caught up to him at once. His exosuit finally gave out completely, sparking and dying. He was fighting with just his own strength now. Vextor saw the weakness and charged. This would be his killing blow. He put all his remaining strength into one massive strike aimed at Minho's head. It would end the fight. End the war. End everything. Minho did not dodge, instead he stepped forward inside the attack. He took the glancing blow to his shoulder. Bones cracked. Pain exploded through him. But he was close now, closer than Vextor expected. Close enough to deliver his own strike. Minho hit Vextor in the throat. Not to kill, but to disable. The strike was perfect, placed exactly where Kreldan had told them. Vextor's breathing passage collapsed. The High Commander fell to his knees, gasping for air, unable to continue. The arena was silent. Admiral Minho Kang stood over High Commander Vextor. Barely conscious himself, bleeding, broken, but standing. He had won. By Dralith law, Vextor had to order his forces to withdraw. By their honor code, he had lost fairly. The war was supposed to end, but Vextor, gasping and defeated, tried one last act of defiance. He reached for his communicator to order his fleet to ignore the Kalmara result. He would tell them to continue the assault on Earth regardless of his loss. Before he could speak, Subcommander Thalrax cut his communication channel. From his own ship, Thalrax took control of the Dralith fleet. He broadcast to all Dralith forces that the Kalmara had been honored. Vextor had lost fairly. They must withdraw. The Dralith military split completely at that moment. Some officers supported Thalrax and began withdrawing their ships. Others remained loyal to Vextor and prepared to fight on. The Empire's forces started fighting each other, Dralith against Dralith. Minho watched this from the arena's medical bay. He had won the fight, but the war was not over. His victory had not brought peace. Instead, it had started a civil war within the Empire. And then the worst news arrived. The Dralith Emperor, enraged by everything that had happened, gave the final order. Launch the planet killers. All of them. Now. The civil war among the Dralith had disrupted their coordination. Only 3 of the 12 planet killers launched successfully. But 3 was still too many. The missiles were heading toward Earth, the Vexlari homeworld and Thalrax's command ship. Earth had 4 weeks before impact. 4 weeks to complete Dr. Hannah Park's impossible plan. 4 weeks to move an entire planet. Dr. Hannah Park came to see Minho in the medical bay. He was covered in bandages, his shoulder in a cast, barely able to move. But he was alive. She told him about the planet killers and the timeline. Minho looked at her with tired eyes. He had given everything in the arena. His body was broken, but his mind was still sharp. He asked her if the quantum shift would really work. Hannah smiled. It was a desperate, crazy smile. She said she had figured out how to make it work. They could not destroy the planet killers, but they could move Earth out of the way. The price would be high. Every quantum generator on Earth would be needed. The risk of failure was enormous, but it was possible. Minho nodded slowly. He told her to begin. Humanity had fought too hard to give up now. The final battle for Earth's survival was about to begin. and this time they would be fighting against time itself. Every person on Earth knew what was coming. 3 planet-killer missiles traveling at nearly the speed of light. One aimed directly at them. 4 weeks until impact. 4 weeks to do the impossible. Dr. Hannah Park explained the plan to the world. They would create a quantum bubble around the entire planet. This bubble would let them shift Earth's position by billions of kilometers. The planet killers would fly through empty space where Earth used to be. It sounded like science fiction. Many people did not believe it was possible. But Hannah had the calculations. She had the theory. All she needed was enough power and perfect coordination. Every quantum generator on Earth was needed. Every power plant, every research station, even civilian power sources would be drained to feed the system. The slightest miscalculation would tear the planet apart or leave it trapped in a quantum void. But humanity had no other choice. They began building. Scientists worked without sleeping. They collapsed at their stations and were carried away while others took their places. Construction crews built quantum generators in record time. Factories produced components day and night. The entire species focused on one goal with absolute determination. The coalition species helped however they could. Ships arrived with rare materials that Earth needed. Engineers from alien species shared their knowledge. Even some Dralith who had sided with Sub-Commander Thalrax sent resources and technical data. Thalrax himself contacted Admiral Minho. The Dralith commander provided detailed information about the planet killers, their trajectories, their propulsion systems, anything that might help. He also warned that loyalist Dralith forces were still hunting for Earth's location to launch a conventional attack before the quantum shift could happen. Captain Jiho Nam had recovered enough to fly again. His body was still healing, but he refused to stay grounded while Earth needed defenders. He took command of Ghost Squadron and a mixed fleet of human and defector Dralith ships. They formed a defensive ring around Earth, ready to buy time at any cost. With 1 week remaining, the loyalist Dralith found Earth. A large fleet dropped out of hyperspace and immediately attacked. Their mission was to destroy the quantum generators before they could activate. The battle for Earth's survival began. Every human ship, every defense platform, every weapon was thrown into the fight. This was not a battle for territory or resources. This was a battle for existence. If the Dralith destroyed even one quantum generator, the entire plan would fail. Sergeant Doyen Choi's ground forces defended the quantum installations with desperate courage. The Dralith dropped troops from orbit, trying to sabotage the generators from the ground. Doyen's soldiers fought them street by street, building by building, knowing that every second they held the line brought Earth closer to salvation. Admiral Minho commanded the defense from Earth's operations center. His body was still broken from the arena fight, but his mind was sharp as ever. He moved forces like chess pieces, always staying one step ahead of the enemy. A Dralith strike team broke through the orbital defenses. They were heading straight for the main quantum generator. If they destroyed it, Earth was doomed. Doyen's forces intercepted them in a brutal close-quarters battle. Humans and Dralith fought hand-to-hand in the corridors around the generator. The casualties were terrible, but the line held. The generator survived. Captain Jiho saw a Dralith cruiser preparing to bombard a critical installation. There was no time to intercept it properly. He made a decision that shocked everyone. He aimed his fighter directly at the cruiser and accelerated to maximum speed. His squadron screamed at him over the radio to pull away, but Jiho kept flying. At the last second, he ejected from his fighter. The ship crashed into the cruiser's engines, crippling it. Jiho's pod tumbled through space, damaged and burning. Another pilot caught his pod and pulled him to safety. Jiho had survived, but he was badly hurt again. He joked over the radio that he was running out of body parts to break. Sub-Commander Thalrax brought his defector fleet into the battle. Dralith fought Dralith in the space around Earth. Thalrax broadcast a message to the Loyalist forces. He told them the Empire was already dead. They were fighting for nothing. It was time to choose what kind of future they wanted. Some Loyalist ships stopped fighting. Their crews had been having doubts anyway. Seeing their own people on the other side made them question everything. Ship by ship, some of them switched sides or simply withdrew from the battle, but others fought on, determined to complete their mission or die trying. Dr. Hannah Park worked frantically in the control center. The quantum generators were reaching critical synchronization. Everything was going according to plan. Then one generator began to fail. Battle damage had weakened its structure. She ran the calculations. The system needed all generators working to shift Earth safely. But the damaged one was about to explode. She could compensate by overloading the other generators. But that raised the risk of catastrophic failure to 60%. It was either accept the risk or watch Earth die for certain. She made the decision. Overload the system. They would risk everything for a chance. With hours remaining before the planet killers arrived, Hana initiated the quantum shift sequence. Every generator on Earth activated simultaneously. The whole planet began to vibrate. A low hum filled the air everywhere, felt in bones rather than heard with ears. The sky began to change. Colors appeared that humans had never seen before. Geometric patterns formed in the clouds. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist. People reported seeing impossible things. The very fabric of space was being altered. Admiral Minho watched a Dralith battleship break through the defensive line. It was heading for Hana's control station.
He had seconds to decide.
If he redirected all defensive fire to protect the station, other areas would be left exposed. Thousands of people would die. But without the control station, the quantum shift would fail. Everyone would die, he gave the order. Every weapon turned toward the battleship. They destroyed it just seconds before it could fire, but the cost was heavy. Other Dralith ships hit undefended targets. Entire districts of cities were bombed. Thousands died in moments. Minho closed his eyes. More names for the memorial walls. More deaths on his conscience. But the quantum shift continued. The planet began to disappear. Not all at once, but in phases. Earth existed in multiple realities simultaneously. People could see through the ground to the other side of the planet. Gravity went crazy. Time seemed to slow down and speed up randomly. Then, with a flash of light that could be seen across the solar system, Earth vanished from its orbit. For several terrifying seconds, the planet existed nowhere. Caught between realities, between existence and void, people prayed, cried, held each other. Then Earth rematerialized. The planet appeared in space over 2 billion kilometers from its original position. The quantum shift had worked. Hours later, the planet killers arrived. They streaked through the empty space where Earth used to be. The relativistic missiles sailed past harmlessly, continuing into deep space. Earth was saved. The remaining Dralith forces, stranded billions of kilometers from their target, surrendered or retreated. The battle was over. The war was over, but the galaxy was forever changed. The Dralith Empire collapsed completely over the following years. The Emperor was overthrown by his own people. The vast empire fractured into dozens of smaller states. Some joined Thalrax's new Dralith Federation and embraced democratic reforms. Others clung to the old ways and became isolated. The coalition of free worlds became a formal alliance. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were now free. Humanity, once unknown and isolated, became a founding member and moral leader of this new galactic order. Years passed. Admiral Minho Kang retired from active command. His body never fully recovered from his injuries, but he did not mind. He established a memorial on the moon, now in a different orbit around the repositioned Earth. The memorial honored all who died defending humanity. Minho spent his remaining years teaching at the new Interstellar Defense Academy. He made sure future generations understood that superior numbers meant nothing against superior will. Dr. Hana Park led the Coalition's Joint Research Initiative. Her goal was to ensure the galaxy never again faced weapons of total destruction. The quantum shift technology was classified. Most of it was destroyed, with Hana personally supervising its decommissioning. Some knowledge, she believed, was too dangerous to keep. Captain Jiho Nam could no longer fly combat missions, but he trained the next generation of pilots. His unconventional tactics became standard curriculum. He also worked closely with Thalrax's Federation, building bridges between former enemies through shared respect for courage. Ambassador Sora Lee became the Coalition's first Secretary General. Her diplomatic skills guided dozens of species learning to work together as equals. The work was difficult, but she had proven that cooperation could achieve what war never could. Sergeant Doyen Choi remained in service, leading peacekeeping forces that helped liberated species rebuild. He found more satisfaction in protecting than fighting, though he never forgot the lessons of war. Yuna Kim continued broadcasting, but her message changed. Instead of resistance, she spoke of hope and unity. She documented the galaxy's transformation, ensuring nobody forgot the sacrifices that had made freedom possible.